television license or broadcast receiving license is an official record of payment required in many countries for the reception of television broadcasts, or the possession of a television set where some broadcasts are funded in full or in part by the license fee paid. The license is sometimes also required to own a radio or receive radio broadcasts. A TV license is therefore effectively a hypothecated tax for the purpose of funding public broadcasting, thus allowing public broadcasters to transmit television programs without, or with only supplemental, funding from radio and television advertisements. However, in some cases the balance between public funding and advertisements is the opposite. The Polish TVP broadcaster receives more funds from advertisements than from its TV tax. Whilst TV licensing is rare in the Americas, half of the countries in Asia and Africa, and two-thirds of the countries in Europe use television licenses to fund public television. History: the early days of broadcasting presented broadcasters with a problem of how to raise funding for their services. Some countries adopted the advertising model, but many others adopted a compulsory public subscription model, with the subscription coming in the form of a broadcast license paid by households owning a radio set. The UK was the first country to adopt the compulsory public subscription model, with the license fee money going to the BBC, which was formed on January 1, 1927 by Royal Charter to produce publicly funded programming yet remain independent from government, both managerially and financially. The license was originally known as a wireless license. With the arrival of television, some countries created a separate additional television license, while others simply increased the radio license fee to cover the additional cost of TV broadcasting, changing the license's name from radio license to TV license, or receiver license. Today most countries fund public radio broadcasting from the same license fee that is used for television, although a few still have separate radio licenses, or apply a lower or no fee at all for consumers who only have a radio. Some countries also have different fees for users with color or monochrome TV. Many give discounts, or charge no fee, for elderly and/or disabled consumers. Faced with the problem of license fee evasion, some countries choose to fund public broadcasters directly from taxation or via other less avoidable methods such as a co-payment with electricity billing. National public broadcasters in some countries also carry supplemental advertising. The Council of Europe created the European Convention on Transfrontier Television in 1989 that regulates, among other things, advertising standards, time and the format of breaks, which also has an indirect effect on the usage of licensing. In 1993, this treaty entered into force when it achieved 7 ratifications including 5 member states. It has since been acceded to by 34 countries, as of 2010. Television licenses around the world. The Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago notes that 2/3 of the countries in Europe and half of the countries in Asia and Africa use television licenses to fund public television. TV licensing is rare in the Americas, largely being confined to French overseas departments and British overseas territories. In some countries, radio channels and broadcasters' websites are also funded by a radio receiver license, giving access to radio and web services free of commercial advertising. The actual cost and implementation of the television license varies greatly from country to country. The rest of this section looks at the license fee in a number of countries around the world. Europe Albania. The Albanian license fee is 800 leka per year. However, the license fee makes up only a small part of public broadcaster RTSH's funding. RTSH is mainly funded directly from the government through taxes, the remaining 42% comes from commercials and the license fee. Austria. In accordance with the Austria RGG, all broadcasting reception equipment in use or operational at a given location must be registered. The location of the equipment is taken to be places of residence or any other premises with a uniform purpose of use. Responsible for license administration in Austria is GIS, Geber-1/4 Service GmbH, a 100% subsidiary of the Austrian Broadcasting Company, as well as an agency of the Ministry of Finance, charged with performing functions concerning national interests. Transaction volume in 2007 amounted to €682 million, 66% of which are allocated to the ORF for financing the organization and its programs, and 35% are allocated to the federal government and the local governments. GIS employs some 191 people and approximately 125 freelancers in field service. 3.4 million Austrian households are registered at GIS. Percentage of licensed Dodgers in Austria amounts to 2.5%. The main principle of GIS communication strategy is to inform instead of control. To achieve this goal, GIS uses a 4-channel communication strategy: above-the-line activities, direct mails, distribution channels outlets where people can acquire the necessary forms for registering, field service customer consultants visiting households not yet registered. The annual television and radio license varies in price depending on which state one lives in. Annual fees from April 2012 are: Belgium, the license fee in Belgium's Walloon region and Brussels region is a €149.67 for a TV and a €26.72 for a car radio. Only one license is needed for each household regardless of how many television sets there are. However, each car with a radio must have a separate car radio license. Household radios do not require a license. The money raised by the fee is used to fund Belgium's French and German public broadcasters. Bosnia and Herzegovina, the license fee in Bosnia and Herzegovina is around $46 per year. The civil war and the associated collapse of infrastructure caused very high evasion rates. This has in part been resolved by collecting the license fee as part of a household's monthly telephone bill. The license fee is divided between 3 broadcasters, 50% for BHRT, as main state-level radio and television broadcaster in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 25% for a TV-FBIH, radio and television broadcaster that primarily serves the population in the Federation of BH entity, 25% for a TRS, radio and television broadcaster which primarily serves the population of Republika Srpska entity. There is a public corporation in the establishment which should be consisted of all public broadcasters in BH. Croatia, the license fee in Croatia is regulated with the Croatian Radio Television Act. As of 2010, the last incarnation of the Act dates from 2003. The license fee is charged to all owners of equipment capable of receiving TV and radio broadcasts. The total yearly amount of the fee is set each year as a percentage of the average net salary in the previous year, currently equal to 1.5%. This works out at about a $137 per year per household with at least one radio or TV receiver. The fee is the main source of revenue for the national broadcaster Vatska Radio Televizija, and a secondary source of income for other national and local broadcasters, which receive a minority share of this money. The statute of the Croatian Radio Television further divides their majority share to 66% for television and 34% for the radio, and sets out further financial rules. According to law, advertisements and a number of other sources of income are allowed to HRT. However, the percentage of airtime which may be devoted to advertising is limited by law to 9% per hour, and is lower than the one that applies to commercial broadcasters. In addition, other rules govern advertising on HRT, including a limit on a single commercial during short breaks, no breaks during films, etc. Croatian television law was formed in compliance with the European Convention on Transfrontier Television that Croatia had joined between 1999 and 2002. Czech Republic, the license fee in the Czech Republic is 135 kr per month as from January 1, 2008. This increase is to compensate for the abolishment of paid advertisements except in narrowly defined circumstances during a transitional period. Each household pays for one TV license regardless of how many televisions they own. Corporations and the self-employed must pay for a license for each television. Denmark, the license fee in Denmark is 2414 kr in media license fee. The black-white TV rate is no longer offered after January 1, 2007. The majority of the license fee is used to fund the national radio and TV broadcaster Doctor. However, a proportion is used to fund TV2's regional services. TV2 itself used to get means from the license fee but is now funded exclusively through advertising revenue. Though economically independent from the license fee, TV2 still has obligations and requirements towards serving the public which are laid down in a so-called public service contract between the government and all public service providers. TV2 commercials may only be broadcast between programs, including films. TV2 receives indirect subsidies through favorable loans from the state of Denmark. TV2 also gets a smaller part of the license for their 8 regional TV stations which have half an hour of the daily prime time of the channel, and may request additional time on a special new regional TV channel. Finland. In 2013, Finland replaced the television license with a direct unconditional income tax, a leviro, which is €50 to €140 depending on income. The proceeds are used for funding the public broadcaster Élise Radio. France. In 2010, the television license fee in France was a 121 and in the overseas departments and collectivities it was a 78. The license funds services provided by Radio France, France Tar Copyright La Copyright Visions and Radio France Internationale. Metropolitan France receives France 2, France 3, France 5, Art, France 4 and Gully, while overseas departments receive Outre-mer 1 also and France A, in addition to the metropolitan channels, now available through the expansion of the TNT service. Public broadcasters in France supplement their license fee income with revenue from advertising, but changes in the law in 2009 designed to stop public television chasing ratings, have stopped public broadcasters from airing advertising after 8 p.m. Between 1998 and 2004 the proportion of France Tar Copyright La Copyright Visions income that came from advertising declined from around 40% to 30%. To keep the cost of collection low, the license fee in France is collected as part of local taxes. Germany. As of January 1, 2013, the license fee in Germany is now a blanket contribution of a 17.98 per month for all households and is payable regardless of equipment or television radio usage. Businesses and institutions must also contribute. The fee is billed by the month, but typically paid quarterly. People on minimum wage are exempt from the license fee and those with certain disabilities can apply to pay a reduced contribution of a 5.99. Prior to 2013, only households and businesses with at least one television were required to pay. Households with no televisions but with a radio or an internet-capable device were subject to a reduced radio-only fee. The license fee is used to fund the public broadcasters ZDF and Deutschland Radio as well as the 9 regional broadcasters of the ARD network, who altogether run 22 television channels and 61 radio stations. 2 national television stations and 32 regional radio stations carry limited advertising. The 14 regional regulatory authorities for the private broadcasters are also funded by the license fee, and in some states, non-profit community radios also get small amounts of the license fee. In contrast to ARD, ZDF and Deutschland Radio, Germany's international broadcaster Deutsche Welle is fully funded by the German federal government, though much of its new content is provided by the ARD. Germany currently has one of the largest total public broadcast budgets in the world. The per capita budget is close to the European average. Annual income from license fees is approximately €7.6 billion, with an additional €500 million in revenue from commercials. The Board of Public Broadcasters sued the German states for interference with their budgeting process, and on September 11, 2007 the Supreme Court decided in their favor. This effectively rendered the public broadcasters institution independent and self-governing. Public broadcasters have announced that they are determined to utilize all available ways to reach their customers, and as such have started a very broad internet presence with media portals, news and TV programs. National broadcasters have abandoned an earlier pledge to restrict their online activities. This resulted in newspapers taking court action against the ARD, claiming that the ARD's Take Us Our smartphone app, that provides news stories at no cost to the app user, was unfairly subsidized by the license fee, to the detriment of free market providers of news content apps. the case was dismissed with the court advising the two sides to agree a compromise. Greece. The license fee in Greece is indirect but obligatory and paid through electricity bills. The amount to be paid is of 51.60 for every separate account of the electrical company. Its beneficiary is the state broadcaster Ellinika Radiofonou Kybrasi. Predicted 2006 annual revenue of ERT from the license fee is at 262.6 m. There has been some discussion about imposing a direct license fee after complaints from people who do not own a television set and yet are still forced to fund ERT. An often quoted joke is that even the dead pay the license fee. In June 2013, ERT was closed down to save money for the Greek government. In the government decree, it was announced during that time, license fees are to be temporarily suspended. Ireland. As of 2012, the cost of a television license in Ireland is a €160. In 2006, the charge was a €158, up from a €155 in 2005. However, the license is free to anyone over the age of 70, to some over 66, and to the blind. The Irish Post Office, and Post, is responsible for collection of the license fee and commencement of prosecution proceedings in cases of non-payment. However, An Post has signalled its intention to withdraw from the license fee collection business. The Irish TV licence makes up 50% of the revenue of RTA Permil, the national broadcaster. The rest comes from RTA Permil broadcasting advertisements on its radio and TV stations. Furthermore, some RTA Permil services, such as RTA Permil 2 Fathoms, RTA Permil Airtel, RTA Permil EA, and the transmission network operate on an entirely commercial basis. The license fee does not entirely go to RTA Permil. After collection costs, 5% is used for the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland's Sound and Vision Scheme, which provides a fund for programme production and restoration of archive material which is open to applications from any quarters. 5% of what RTA Permil then receive is granted to TG4, as well as a requirement to provide them with programming. The remainder of TG4's funding is direct state grants and commercial income. The license applies to a particular premises, so a separate license is required for holiday homes or motor vehicles which contain a television. The license must be paid for premises that have any equipment that can potentially decode TV signals, even those that are not RTA Permil-S. Italy. In 2014, the license fee in Italy was a €113.50 per household with a TV set, independent of use. There is also a special license fee paid by owners of one or more TV or radio sets on public premises or anyhow outside the household context, independent of the use. It is the primary source of income for RAI, which also broadcasts advertising. Italy has problems with collection of the license, with approximately 40% of viewers not paying their license. One of the reasons is that the maximum fine is only half the license fee itself, compared to the UK where the fine is up to £1,000. Viewers in the province of South Tyrol, Italy, which has a large German-speaking majority, can also receive Austrian and German public TV and radio channels via terrestrial transmissions, with no additional license fee. Macedonia. The license fee in the Republic of Macedonia is around $26 per year. Until 2005 it was collected monthly as part of the electricity bill. The current law on broadcasting activity, which was adopted in November 2005, reads that the public broadcasting service Euro-Macedonian radio and television shall collect the broadcast fee. The funds collected from the broadcasting fee are allocated in the following manner: 72% for MRT for covering costs for creating and broadcasting programs. 4.5% for MRT for technical and technological development. 16% for MRD for maintenance and use of the public broadcasting network. 3.5% for MRD for public broadcasting network development and 4% for the Broadcasting Council for regulating and development of the broadcasting activity in the Republic of Macedonia. The MRT shall keep 0.5% of the collected funds from the broadcasting fee as commission fee. However, MRT still has not found an effective mechanism for collection of the broadcast tax, so it has suffered a severe underfunding in the recent years. Recently, the Macedonian government decided to update the law on broadcasting, authorizing the Public Revenue Office to be in charge of collection of the broadcast fee. In addition to broadcast fee funding, Macedonian radio television also takes advertising and sponsorship. The broadcasting fee is paid by every family household in the Republic of Macedonia. Hotels and motels are charged one broadcasting fee for every 5 rooms. Legal persons and office space owners are obliged to pay one broadcasting fee to every 20 employees or other persons that use the office space. Owners of catering and other public facilities possessing a radio receiver or TV set must pay one broadcasting fee for each receiver set. The government of the Republic of Macedonia, upon a proposal of the Broadcasting Council, shall determine which broadcasting fee payers in populated areas that are not covered by the broadcasting signal shall be exempt from payment of the broadcasting fee. The households with a blind person whose vision is impaired over 90% or families with a person whose hearing is impaired with an intensity of over 60 decibels, as determined in compliance with the regulations on disability insurance, are exempt from the duty to pay the broadcasting fee for the household where the family of the person lives. Montenegro, in accordance with the broadcasting law, every household and legal entity, situated in the Republic, where technical conditions for reception of at least one radio or television program have been provided, is obliged to pay a monthly broadcasting subscription fee. The monthly fees are 3.50. The Broadcasting Agency of Montenegro is in charge of collecting the fee. The funds from the subscription received by the agency belong to the Republic's public broadcasting services are Euro 75%, the agency's fund for the support of the local public broadcasting services are Euro 10%, the agency's fund for the support of the commercial broadcasting services are Euro 10%, the agency are Euro 5%. Norway. The license fee in Norway is 2680, 56k per annum. The fee is mandatory for any owner of a TV set, and is the primary source of income for norsk rikskringkasting. The license fee is charged on a per-household basis. Therefore addresses with more than one television receiver generally only require a single license. An exception is made if the household includes persons living at home who is no longer provided for by the parents, for example students living at home. If persons not in parental care own a separate television they must pay the normal fee. Poland, the current annual license fee in Poland for television set is 199.80 ZAR per annum. The license may be paid monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, half-yearly or annually, but the total cost when paying for less than a year in advance is higher. Those that have no TV but have a radio must pay the radio-only license which costs 59.40 ZAR per year. The license is collected and maintained by the Polish Post Office, POCZTA Polska. Around 60% of the fee goes to Telewizja Polska with the rest going to Polski Radio. In return public television is not permitted to interrupt its programs with advertisements. The TV license is waived for those over 75. Only one license is required for a single household irrespective of number of sets, but in case of commercial premises one license for each set must be paid. However, public health institutions, all nurseries, educational institutions, hospices and retirement homes need to pay only single license per building or building complex they occupy. There is a major problem with license evasion in Poland. This is due to the collection based on the honesty-based opt-in system, rather than the British system of opt-out, that is a person liable to pay the license has to register on their own, there being no effective means to compel people to register and to prosecute those that fail to do so. Also as the licensing inspectors, who are usually postmen, do not have the right of entry to inspect premises and must get the owner a Euro unregistered trademark S or main occupier a Euro unregistered trademark S permission to enter. Due to this, it is estimated that about 65% of households evade the license fee, compared to an average of 10% in the European Union. Due to the difficulty in license fee collection, the current POPSL government is reviewing the funding for public broadcasting, which could include abolishing the fee. Polish Prime Minister, current, Donald Tusk in 2008 called television license archaic and a Euroharaka. 73% of Poles are against it, according to 2012 research poll. Romania, the license fee in Romania for a household is 48 Romanian lei per annum. Small businesses pay about a 45 and large businesses about a 150. The license fee is collected as part of the electricity bill. The license fee makes up part of Televizia Roma Centena Floren's funding, with the rest coming from advertising and government grants. However, some people accuse that it is paid twice, both to the electricity bill and to the cable or satellite operator indirectly, although cable and satellite providers are claiming they are not. In Romania, you must prove that you don't own a TV receiver in order not to pay the license fee, but however if own a computer, you will pay, as you are able to watch TVR content online. Some people are criticizing this, because in the last years, TVR lost a lot of their watchers, and also because with the analog switch off from June 17, 2015, it is still not widely available on digital terrestrial, and it is encrypted on satellite. Also, TVR will shift to DVB-T2, and with many sets sold only with DVB-T, TVR will become unavailable to some users without a digital terrestrial receiver. No evasion can be made however, as it is however part of the electricity bill. Serbia, license fees in Serbia are bundled together with electricity bills and collected on a monthly basis. There have been increasing indications that the government of Serbia is considering the temporary cessation of the license fee until a more effective financing solution is found. However, as of August 28, 2013 this step has yet to be realized. Slovakia, the total license in Slovakia comes to approximately a 42 per annum. In addition to the license fee, STV also receives state subsidies and money from advertising. Slovenia, since June 2013, the annual license fee in Slovenia stands at a 153.00 for receiving both television and radio services, or a 45.24 for radio services only, paid by the month. This amount is payable once per household, regardless of the number of televisions or radios. Businesses and the self-employed pay this amount for every set, and pay higher rates where they are intended for public viewing rather than the private use of its employees. The license fee is used to fund national broadcaster TV Slovenija. In calendar year 2007, the license fee raised to 78.1 million, or approximately 68% of total operating revenue. The broadcaster then supplements this income with advertising, which by comparison provided revenues of a 21.6 million in 2007, or about 19% of operating revenue. Sweden. The current license fee in Sweden is 2216 kr per annum. It is collected on behalf of the three public broadcasters by Radio Currency and STI Kiruna AB, which is jointly owned by them. The fee pays for 5 TV channels, 45 radio channels as well as TV and radio on the Internet. In Sweden, the term television license was replaced in the 2000s by television fee. The fee is collected by Radio Currency NST from every household containing a TV set, and possession of such a device must be reported to Radio Currency NST as required by law. One fee is collected per household regardless of number of TV sets, in the home or in alternate locations owned by the household such as summer houses. Although the fee also pays for radio broadcasting, there is no fee for radios. Suggestions of replacing the fee with a tax occur sometimes in the media. Around 90% of households have reported that they have a television set and thereby need to pay the fee. However, the number of households not containing a TV set are considered by Radio Currency NST to be a lot fewer than the 10% that don't pay licenses. The personnel of Radio Currency NSTI Kiruna AB have no authority to investigate inside households. In February 2013 Radio Currency NSTI Kiruna AB changed their interpretation of the Swedish television fee law. In their new interpretation, any personal computer connected to the Internet was also considered a TV set and thereby required payment of the TV fee. On June 12, 2014, this interpretation was declared void by the Supreme Administrative Court of Sweden, prompting Radio Currency NST to return the illegally collected fees. Switzerland. According to the Swiss federal law on radio and television, the reception of radio or television programs from SAGSSA must be registered and is subject to reception fees. The fees are paid per household or business location and not per device. The license fee in Switzerland is 462.40 Swiss francs per year for TV and radio. Viewers in South Tyrol, Italy, which has a large German-speaking minority, can also receive the Swiss German language channels via terrestrial digital transmissions, but do not have to pay a license fee. Turkey, according to the law, a license fee at the rate of 8% or 16%, depending on equipment type, is paid to TRT by the producer-importer of the TV receiving equipment. Consumers indirectly pay this fee only for once, at initial purchase of the equipment. Also 2% tax is cut from each household industrial electricity bill. However, government has plans to cancel this tax soon and fund the state broadcaster mainly from state budget. No registration is required for purchasing TV receiver equipment. United Kingdom. A television license is required for each household where television programs are watched or recorded as they are broadcast, irrespective of the signal method. A license is not required if a television is only used to watch DVDs or play video games, or if programs are watched via catch-up services such as BBC iPlayer or 4OD on a computer, after they have been shown on TV. The cost of the TV license fee is set by the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, with the BBC responsible for collecting payment. As it is classified in law as a tax, evasion is a criminal offence. 204,018 people were prosecuted or fined in 2014 for TV license offences, 185,580 in England and Wales, 4,905 people in Northern Ireland and 15 in the Isle of Man. In Scotland, there were 13,486 cases disposed of via an out-of-court fine and 32 prosecuted via the courts from 2013 to 2014. There have been no prosecutions for TV license offences in Jersey since 2009, all cases having been resolved at Parish Hall Inquiry. Putting these numbers in perspective, it would appear there are more prosecutions and convictions per capita in Wales than in any other country in the UK. Around 70% of TV license evaders are female. This 30-70% male-female ratio is pretty much constant across the whole of the UK and is at odds with statistics for other small crimes. 24,025 prosecutions that were commenced by the BBC did not result in conviction last year. Criminal sanctions mean a fine and a £200 in the Isle of Man, a criminal record and court costs, a victim surcharge and a new criminal courts charge in England and Wales. TV license evasion is not punishable by a period of imprisonment per se, but if convicted evaders refuse to pay the fine they were ordered to pay, or are incapable of paying it, a period of imprisonment may be imposed as €OE last resort €. The length of stay is decided by the amount owed. In England and Wales, 39 people were given an average of 20 days in 2014. This, however, is an all-round lose-lose situation. The BBC gains nothing in the way of monies and it costs the taxpayer an average of £95 per day to keep one person behind bars. This estimate is based on a disclosure from the Ministry of Justice that it costs a £34,766 per annum to house a UK prisoner. There were no custodial sentences imposed during the 5-year period 2009 €10 to 2013 €14 in Scotland or in Jersey. The British Parliament proposed decriminalising the offence once and for all, but the proposition was turned down by a House of Lords vote by 178 to 175 in February 2015. This is curious because the Lords actually recommended the offence be decriminalised in their 2005 2006 BBC Charter Renewal paper. Behavioural research conducted for the BBC found that if the TV licence was decriminalised and the £1,000 fine was replaced by a civil penalty of over £300 was set, evasion rates would stay at 5%. The license costs £145.50 for a colour license and £49 for monochrome. Discounted, free or government-paid licenses are available to viewers over 75, blind people and those in residential care. One license covers all receivers in a household, with separately rented or leased rooms and apartments being considered as individual households. A portion of the license fee is used by the BBC to enforce payment as well as funding Digital UK, a body established to assist in the process of digital switchover, and a direct payment to Channel 4, to assist in its digital switchover. The license fee is used almost entirely to fund BBC domestic radio, television and Internet services. The money received from the fee represents approximately 75% of the cost of these services, with most of the remainder coming from the profits of BBC Worldwide, a commercial wing of the corporation which sells programmes and runs stations overseas, as well as other business allied to broadcasting such as publishing. The BBC also receives some funding from the Scottish Government via MG Ulba to finance the BBC Ulba television service in Scotland. The BBC used to receive a direct government grant from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to fund television and radio services broadcast to other countries, such as the BBC World Service Radio and BBC Arabic Television. These services run on a non-profit, non-commercial basis, distinct from other BBC-branded overseas services provided by the commercial BBC Worldwide. The grant was abolished on April 1, 2014, leaving these services to be funded by the UK licence fee, a move which has caused some controversy. BBC websites are popular outside the UK, but these carry advertising when seen outside the UK. Advertising is not seen on the BBC websites when viewed from within the UK. Advertising is seen on BBC websites created by the BBC Worldwide Company, regardless of where they are viewed. The BBC website clarifies the funding source. The BBC is not the only public service broadcaster. Channel 4 is also a public television service but is funded through advertising and government grants. The Welsh language S4C in Wales is funded through a combination of direct grant from the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, advertising, and receives some of its programming free of charge by the BBC. These other broadcasters are all much smaller than the BBC. In addition to the public broadcasters, the UK has a wide range of commercial television funded by a mixture of advertising and subscription. A television licence is still required of viewers who solely watch such commercial channels, although 74.9% of the population watches BBC One in any given week, making it the most popular channel in the country. A similar licence, mandated by the Wireless Telegraphy Act 1904, existed for radio, but was abolished in 1971. Asia Israel, the television license for 2014 in Israel was a 345 and the radio license was a 136. The license fee was the primary source of revenue for the Israel Broadcasting Authority, the state broadcaster. However, its radio stations carry full advertising and some TV programs are sponsored by commercial entities. Due to reforms that abolished the Israel Broadcasting Authority, Israel's television tax was terminated in March 2015. In Japan, the annual license fee for terrestrial television broadcasts is A15,490 and A25,520 if you receive satellite broadcasts. There is a separate license for monochrome TV, and fees are different in Okinawa. The Japanese license fee pays for the national broadcaster Nippon Hazakai. While every household in Japan with a television set is required to have a license, it was reported in 2006 that non-payment had become an epidemic, because of a series of scandals involving NHK. As reported in 2005, there is no fine or any other form of sanction for non-payment. Pakistan, the television license in Pakistan is Rs 720 per year. It is collected as a Rs 80 per month charge to all consumers of electricity. The proceeds of the fee and advertising are used to fund PTV. South Korea, in South Korea, the television license fee is collected for the Korean Broadcasting System and Educational Broadcasting System and is a copyright 30,000 per year. It has stood at this level since 1981, and now makes up less than 40% of KBS's income and less than 8% of EBS's income. Its purpose is to maintain public broadcasting in South Korea, and to give public broadcasters the resources to do their best to produce and broadcast public interest programs. The fee is collected by the Korea Electric Power Corporation through electricity billing. Africa Ghana. The license fee in Ghana is used to fund the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Mauritius. The license fee in Mauritius is Rs 1,200 per year. It is collected as part of the electricity bill. The proceeds of the license fee are used to fund the Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation. The license fee makes up 60% of MBC's funding, with most of the rest coming from television and radio commercials. However, the introduction of private broadcasting in 2002 has put pressure on MBC's revenue from commercials, and this is decreasing. Furthermore, MBC is affecting the profitability of the private stations who want the government to make MBC commercial-free. Namibia. The license fee in Namibia was $204 in 2001. The fee is used to fund the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. South Africa. The license fee in South Africa is $250 per annum for TV. A concessionary rate of $70 is available for those over 70, and disabled persons or war veterans who are in social welfare. The license fee partially funds the public broadcaster, the South African Broadcasting Corporation. The SABC does, unlike some other public broadcasters, derive much of its income from advertising. Proposals to abolish licensing have been circulating since October 2009. The national carrier hopes to receive funding entirely via state subsidies and commercials. According to IOL.co.za, television license collections for the 2008 September financial year amounted to $972 million. Countries where the TV license has been abolished. The following countries have had television licenses, but subsequently abolished them. Australia. Radio license fees were introduced in Australia in the 1920s to fund the first privately owned broadcasters which were not permitted to sell advertising. With the formation of the government-owned Australian Broadcasting Commission in 1932, the license fees were used to fund ABC broadcasts, while the privately owned stations were permitted to seek revenue from advertising and sponsorship. Television license fees were also introduced in 1956 when the ABC began TV transmissions. All license fees were abolished in 1974 by the Australian Labor Party government led by Gough Whitlam on the basis that the near universality of television and radio services meant that public funding was a fairer method of providing revenue for government-owned radio and television broadcasters. The ABC has since then been funded by government grants, now totaling around $1.13 billion Australian dollars a year, and its own commercial activities. In 1964 the Australian television licence cost £6. The fine for not having a licence was £100. The licence was issued on a punch card. Belgium. The Flemish region of Belgium abolished its television licence in 2001. The Flemish broadcaster VRT is now funded from general taxation. Cyprus. Cyprus used to have an indirect but obligatory tax for CYBC, its state-run public broadcasting service. The tax was added to electricity bills, and the amount paid depended on the size of the home. By the late 1990s, it was abolished due to pressure from private radio and TV broadcasters. CYBC is currently funded by advertising and government grants. Finland. Finland abolished its television fee on January 1, 2013, replacing it with a ring-fenced so-called tax. Unlike the previous fee, the tax is progressive, meaning that people who earn less will pay less and vice versa, from a 50 to a 140, depending on income. However, the new tax is also be applied to all adults and not just once per household, meaning in essence that under the new system, some will pay less than before and others will pay more. Very low-income earners are completely exempt from the tax. Before the introduction of the tax, The television fee in Finland used to be between a 244.90 and a 253.80 per annum for a household with TV. It was the primary source of funding for Yle's radio, a role which has now been taken over by the Yle tax. Gibraltar equals. It was announced in Gibraltar's budget speech of June 23, 2006 that Gibraltar would abolish its TV license. The 7,452 TV license fees were previously used to part-fund the Gibraltar Broadcasting Corporation. However, the majority of the GBC's funding came in the form of a grant from the government. Hungary equals. In Hungary the license fees nominally exist, but since 2002 the government has decided to pay them out of the state budget. Effectively this means that funding for Magyar Televízió Cubed and Duna TV now comes from the government through taxation. As of spring 2007 commercial units have to pay television license fees again, on a per TV set basis. Since the Parliament decides on the amount of public broadcasters' income, during the 2009 crisis it was possible for it to decide to cut their funding by more than 30%. This move was publicly protested by the EBU. The television licensing scheme has been a problem for Hungarian public broadcasters ever since the initial privatization changes in 1995, and the public broadcaster MTV has been stuck in a permanent financial crisis for years. Iceland equals. The TV license fee for Iceland's national broadcasting service was abolished in 2007. Instead a poll tax of 17.200 kr is collected from all people who pay income tax, regardless of whether they use television and radio. India equals. India introduced a radio receiver license system in 1928, for All India Radio Akashvani. With the advent of television broadcasting in 1956 €57, television was also licensed. With the spurt in television stations beginning 1971 €72, a separate broadcasting company, Doordarshan, was formed. The radio and TV licenses in question needed to be renewed at the post offices on a yearly basis. Annual premium for radio was Rs15 in the 1970s and 1980s. Radio license stamps were issued for this purpose. In 1984, the licensing system was withdrawn with both of the Indian National Public Broadcasters, AIR and Doordarshan, funded instead by the Government of India and by advertising. Malaysia equals. Until it was discontinued in 2000, television license in Malaysia was paid on annual basis of 24 Malaysian ringgits, one of the lowest fees for television service in the world. Now, RTM is funded by government tax and advertising, whilst Media Primo owned another 4 more private broadcasting channels of TV3, NTV7, 8TV and TV9. The other 2, TV Aurora and WBC, are smaller broadcasters. Astro is a paid television service, so they operate by the monthly fees given to them by customers, and it is the same thing for HYPP TV and Access. Malta equals. The license fee in Malta was a 34.90. It was used to fund the television and radio channels run by public broadcasting services. Approximately 2/3 of TVM's funding came from the license fee, with much of the remainder coming from commercials. Malta's television license was abolished in 2011 when the free-to-air system was discontinued. Netherlands equals. Since 1967, advertising has been introduced on the public television and radio, but this was only allowed as a small segment before and after news broadcasts. It wasn't until the late 1980s so-called floating commercial breaks were introduced. These breaks are usually segments of multiple commercials with a total duration of 1 to 3 minutes and are placed in between programs, to allow programs themselves to run uninterrupted. At the time, advertising on Sundays still wasn't yet allowed, mainly in part due to the heavy influence of the churches. In 1991 advertising on Sundays slowly began to take place. With the plan to abolish the license fee in 2000 due to the excessive collection costs and in order to pay for public television from government funds, income tax was increased in the late 1990s and maximum run time of commercial breaks was extended to 5 and 7 minutes. The Netherlands public broadcasting is now funded by government subsidy and advertising. The amount of time used by commercial breaks may not exceed 15% of daily available broadcasting time and 10% of the total yearly available time. New Zealand license fees were first used in New Zealand to fund the radio services of what was to become the New Zealand Broadcasting Corporation. Television was introduced in 1960, and with it the television license fee, later known as the public broadcasting fee. This was capped at $100 a year in the 1970s, and the country's 2 television channels, while still publicly owned, became increasingly reliant on advertising. From 1989, it was collected and dispersed by the Broadcasting Commission on a contestable basis to support local content production. The public broadcasting fee was abolished in July 1999. NZ was then funded by a direct appropriation from the Ministry for Culture and Heritage. Portugal the license fee was abolished in 1992 by the Cavaco Silva government. The fee funded the national public broadcaster ATP. It was replaced with direct government subsidy and advertisements. However, since the merger between the public radio and television enterprises in Portugal, a fraction of the radio license fee has served to fund the commercial advertising-free channel ATP2. The radio license fee was instituted in the early 1990s to fund the public radio channels which are advertising-free, and is charged through electricity bills under the name Taxa de Contribuir Picavolt Poundo Audiovisual. The radio license fee is approximately $33 per year. Singapore Singaporeans with TVs in their households or TVs and radios in their vehicles were required to acquire the appropriate licenses from 1963 to 2010. The cost of the TV license for a household in Singapore was 110 Singapore dollars. Additional licenses were required for radios and TVs in vehicles. The license fee for television and radio was removed with immediate effect from January 1, 2011. This was announced during Finance Minister Tharman Shanmugarasnam's budget statement on February 18, 2011. Mr. Shanmugarasnam chose to abolish the fees as they were losing their relevance. Countries that never had a television or broadcasting license. Europe Andorra, Radio y Televisió Cube d'Andorra, the public broadcaster, is funded by both advertising and government grants. There is no fee. Estonia, in Estonia there are 2 public TV channels, Eesti Televisioon and ETV2. The funding comes from government grant in aid. Around 15% of which was until 2008 funded by the fees paid by Estonian commercial broadcasters in return for their exclusive right to screen television advertising. Showing commercials in public broadcasting television was stopped in 2002. One argument was that its low-cost advertising rates were damaging the ability of commercial broadcasters to operate. The introduction of license fee system was considered but ultimately rejected in the face of public opposition. ETV is currently one of only a few public television broadcasters in EU which has neither advertising nor a license fee, and is solely funded by national government's grants. At the moment, only RTVE of Spain has a similar model, and from 2013 and onwards, the Finnish Yle broadcaster will follow suit. Liechtenstein, in Liechtenstein there is the public radio station Radio Liechtenstein. It was founded as a private station in 1995, but was nationalized in 2004. Radio Liechtenstein is funded by commercials and government grants. A television station, 1FL-TV, was launched in August 2008. Luxembourg has never had a television license, because when RTL was established, it was simply a commercial broadcaster, and acted with public broadcasting dimension in its programming. Plus many Luxembourgers are trilingual in French, German and Luxembourgish, so many watched French, German and Belgian television as well as local TV, so putting a television license in place would be seen as unfair. Monaco has never had a television license requirement. State broadcaster TAR Copyright La Copyright Monte Carlo is run as a commercial broadcaster. Spain, RTVE, the public broadcaster, had been funded by government grants and advertising incomes since it was launched in 1937 and 1956. Although the state-owned national radio stations removed all its advertising in 1986, its public nationwide TV channels continued broadcasting commercial breaks until 2009. Since 2010, the public broadcaster is funded by government grants and taxes paid by private nationwide TV broadcasters and telecommunications companies. North America. Canada, in contrast to the situation in Europe, receiver licensing in Canada never had much to do with the funding of broadcasts. Before 1952, Canadian law required the licensing of all radio receivers, not just those for tuning in broadcasts. In 1952 the Radio Act was amended to exempt broadcast-only receivers from licensing, and the Department of Transport was given authority to exempt other receiver types from licensing as it saw fit. DOT exempted all home-type receivers capable of receiving any radio communications other than public correspondence. After 1952, licenses were required in Canada only for general coverage shortwave receivers with single-sideband capability, and VHF-UHF scanners which could tune to the maritime or land mobile radio telephone bands. Beginning in 1982, in response to a Canadian court's finding that all unscrambled radio signals imply a forfeiture of the right to privacy, the DOC required receiver licensing only in cases where it was necessary to ensure technical compatibility with the transmitter. Regulation SOR 89-253 removed the license requirement for all radio and TV receivers. The responsibility for regulating radio spectrum affairs in Canada has devolved to a number of federal departments and agencies, beginning with the Department of Marine and Fisheries, Department of Transport, Department of Communications and most recently to Industry Canada. United States. In the United States, historically, privately owned commercial radio stations selling advertising quickly proved to be commercially viable enterprises during the first half of the 20th century. Though a few governments-owned non-commercial radio stations, most were owned by charitable organizations and supported by donations. The pattern repeated itself with television in the second half of that century, except that some governments, mostly states, also established educational television stations alongside of the privately owned stations. The United States created the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in 1967, which eventually led to the Public Broadcasting Service and National Public Radio. However, those are loose networks of non-commercial educational stations owned by state and local governments, educational institutions, or non-profit organizations, more like U.S. commercial networks than European public broadcasters. The CPB and virtually all government-owned stations are funded through general taxes, and donations from individual persons and charitable organizations. Additionally, all individual programs on PBS and NPR are now sponsored by companies. While programming is not interrupted by traditional commercial breaks, underwriting spots typically precede and follow each program. Because between 53 and 60% of public television's revenues come from private membership donations and grants, most stations solicit individual donations by methods including fundraising, pledge drives or telethons which can disrupt regularly scheduled programming. Normal programming can be replaced with specials aimed at a wider audience to solicit new members and donations. The annual funding for public television in the United States was $445.2 million in 2012. In some rural portions of the United States, broadcast translator districts exist, which are funded by an ad valorem property tax on all property within the district, or a parcel tax on each dwelling unit within the district. Failure to pay the TV translator tax has the same repercussions as failing to pay any other property tax, including a lien placed on the property and eventual seizure. In addition, fines can be levied on viewers who watch TV from the signals from the translator without paying the fee. As the Federal Communications Commission has exclusive jurisdiction over broadcast stations, whether a local authority can legally impose a fee merely to watch an over-the-air broadcast station is questionable. Depending on the jurisdiction, the tax may be charged regardless of whether the resident watches TV from the translator or instead watches it via cable TV or satellite, or the property owner may certify that they do not use the translator district services and get a waiver. Another substitute for TV licenses comes through cable television franchise fee agreements. The itemized fee on customers' bills is included or added to the cable TV operator's gross income to fund public, educational, and government access television for the municipality that granted the franchise agreement. State governments also may add their own taxes. These taxes generate controversy since these taxes sometimes go into the general fund of governmental entities or there is double taxation. Asia equals China. Neither the Republic of China, nor its contemporary, the People's Republic of China, has ever had a television license fee to pay for the state broadcaster. The current state broadcaster, China Central Television, established in 1958, is funded almost entirely through the sale of commercial advertising time, although this is supplemented by government funding and cable TV subscriptions. But CCTV receives indirect charges from all Chinese cable TV users, about 2 Chinese renminbi yuan per month for each householder, about $0.35 per month, which is similar to TV license. However, satellite and terrestrial TV users don't have to pay this kind of fee. As a result, almost all television channels in China show commercial advertising. TV users charge indirect to state broadcaster CCTV, China Central Television. Hong Kong has never had a television license fee, despite having been a British Crown colony until 1997. Over-the-air television terrestrial broadcasts are always free of charge, no matter whether they are analog or digital. There are public television programs produced by Radio Television Hong Kong. RTHK is funded by the Hong Kong government, but it does not have its own TV channel. Rather, it uses commercial television channels to broadcast its own programs, and each of the traditional 4 terrestrial commercial TV channels in Hong Kong are required to broadcast 2.5 hours of public television per week. However, there is no such requirement for the newer digital channels. RTHK plans to have 4 digital television channels, with one being a high-definition channel, after its move to the new Sung Kwan O headquarters in 2015. RTHK's own programs will return to RTHK's channels in the future. Iran has never levied television license fees. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, National Iranian Radio and Television was renamed Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, and it became the state broadcaster. In Iran, private broadcasting is illegal. Vietnam. Today, almost all television channels in Vietnam carry advertisements, although these networks are state-owned and the media is heavily censored. Now defunct television and radio stations that operated in the former North and South had almost no commercials, and were also government-funded and run. Philippines. In the Philippines, almost all television services are financed through advertising. Additionally, 2 of the 3 broadcasters with state ownership, Radio Philippines Network and the Intercontinental Broadcasting Company, lease their airtime to commercial broadcasters, such as Solar Entertainment and TV5. Africa equals Nigeria. Television licenses are not used in Nigeria, except in the sense of broadcasting licenses granted to private networks. The federal government television station, NTA, has 2 broadcast networks, NTA1 and NTA2. NTA1 is partly funded by the central government and partly by advertising revenue, while NTA2 is wholly funded by advertisements. Almost all of the 36 states have their own television stations funded wholly or substantially by their respective governments. Detection of evasion of television licenses. In many jurisdictions, television licenses are enforced. The BBC states television detector vans are employed by TV licensing in the UK. Besides claims of sophisticated technological methods for the detection of operating televisions, detection of illegal television sets can be as simple as the observation of the lights and sounds of an illegally used television in a user's home at night. Detection is made much easier because nearly all houses do have a license, so only those houses that do not have a license need to be checked. However, in the UK there has been not one single prosecution for TV license evasion based upon evidence obtained using detection equipment. and there is no technical evidence supporting claims that such detection equipment is capable of carrying out the specific task of locating television sets accurately. Indeed, detection equipment used even at the perimeter of a dwelling cannot specifically pinpoint receiving devices based upon the equipment's IF frequency. This frequency is too low down the frequency spectrum to allow such capabilities of any equipment, handheld or otherwise. An effort to compel the BBC to release key information about the television detection vans based on the Freedom of Information Act was rejected. The BBC has stated on record, detection equipment is complex to deploy as its use is strictly governed by the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000 and the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Order 2001. REPA and the order outline how the relevant investigatory powers are to be used by the BBC and ensure compliance with human rights. Opinions of television licensing systems. Advocates argue that one of the main advantages of television fully funded by a license fee is that programming can be enjoyed without interruptions for advertisements. Television funded by advertising is not truly free of cost to the viewer, since the advertising is used mostly to sell mass-market items, and the cost of mass-market goods includes the cost of TV advertising, such that viewers effectively pay for TV when they purchase those products. Viewers also pay in time lost watching advertising. Europeans tend to watch 1 hour less TV per day than do North Americans, but in practice may be enjoying the same amount of television but gaining extra leisure time by not watching advertisements. Even the channels in Europe that do carry advertising carry about 25% less advertising per hour than their North American counterparts. Critics of receiver licensing point out that a license is a regressive form of taxation, because poor people pay more for the service in relation to income. In contrast, the advertisement model implies that costs are covered in proportion to consumption of mass-market goods, particularly luxury goods, so the poorer the viewer, the greater the subsidy. The experience with broadcast deregulation in Europe suggests that demand for commercial-free content is not as high as once thought. The third option, voluntary funding of public television via subscriptions, requires a subscription level higher than the license fee if quality and/or output volume are not to decline. These higher fees would deter even more people from subscribing, leading to further hikes in subscription levels. In time, if public subscription television were subject to encryption to deny access to non-subscribers, the poorest in society would be denied access to the well-funded programs that public broadcasters produce today in exchange for the relatively lower cost of a license. The UK government's Department for Culture, Media and Sport, as part of its BBC Charter Review, asked the public what it thought of various funding alternatives. 59% of respondents agreed with the statement advertising would interfere with my enjoyment of programs, while 31% disagreed. 71% agreed with the statement subscription funding would be unfair to those that could not pay, while 16% disagreed. The department concluded that the license fee was the least worse, sick option. The British government described the license fee system as the best funding model, even though it is not perfect. That is, they believe that the disadvantages of having a license fee are less than the disadvantages of all other methods. In fact, the disadvantages of other methods have led to some countries, especially those in the former Eastern Bloc, to consider the introduction of a TV license. Both Bulgaria and Serbia have attempted to legislate to introduce a television license. In Bulgaria, a fee is specified in the broadcasting law, but it has never been implemented in practice. Lithuania and Latvia have also long debated the introduction of a license fee but so far made little progress on legislating for one. In the case of Latvia, some analysts believe this is partly because the government is unwilling to relinquish the control of Latvia's televizija that funding from general taxation gives it. The Czech Republic has increased the proportion of funding that the public broadcaster gets from license fees, justifying the move with the argument that the existing public service broadcasters cannot compete with commercial broadcasters for advertising revenues. Internet-based broadcast access. The development of the global Internet has created the ability for television and radio programming to be easily accessed outside of its country of origin, with little technological investment needed to implement the capability. Prior to the development of the Internet, this would have required specially acquired satellite relaying and/or local terrestrial rebroadcasting of the international content, at considerable cost to the international viewer. This access can now instead be readily facilitated using off-the-shelf video encoding and streaming equipment, using broadband services within the country of origin. In some cases, no additional technology is needed for international program access via the Internet, if the national broadcaster already has a broadband streaming service established for citizens of their own country. However, countries with TV licensing systems often don't have a way to accommodate international access via the Internet, and instead work to actively block and prevent access because their national licensing rules have not evolved fast enough to adapt to the ever-expanding potential global audience for their material. For example, it is currently not possible for a citizen of the United States to pay for a British TV license in order to watch all of the BBC's programming, streamed live over the Internet in its original format. See also, Broadcast License, City of License, Public Broadcasting, Public Radio, Public Television. References. External links. TV licensing authorities Broadcasting Fee Association, International Organization for Television License Fee Collecting Organizations, a list of TV license authorities by the European Audiovisual Observatory, BILOG, PEMRA, GEZ, ORFGIS, Radio Tja Currency NST, TV licenses, TV licensing, TV Mixuha Linto.